So I'm Amy from the Goddard School in Bellingham. Welcome, everybody. And we'd also like to welcome our speaker tonight, Kathy Whitham. She's a registered nurse, also a child behavior specialist, mom, Grammy, and poet. She helps parents and caregivers at their wits' end to understand what's happening with their child and learn to respond rather than to react to their behavior. Her no-yell system promotes deep connection and communication and lies at the intersection of brain science, attachment theory, intergenerational family dynamics, and parents' inner wisdom. So welcome, Kathy, and thank you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really very excited to be here today with all of you guys. So just quick before we start, if just chat how old your kids are in the box. Just do a quick chat of ages. I'm going to kind of scan the chat box here and there, and it gives me an idea of what age kids were. Great. We've got 4, 5, 3. That's good. That's about the range. A little bit younger, 2.5, 5, and 3. Great. That's perfect. That's a perfect range. 5, 4, and 9. Yeah. So you're going to be learning things today that will apply to different age kids because we're working with more core principles, and it's not specifically age specific, but the strategies can be applied to all the different ages. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to 5 key strategies for peace at home. How to respond rather than react to your child's difficult behavior and big emotions. And I am really so glad to be here with you. So wow, parenting, so different than what we imagined it would be like, right? I know I have 3, so they're all grown up. The frustration, helplessness, and even anger that can get a hold of us as we try to deal with challenging behaviors and big emotions can leave us feeling like we're not being the parent we want to be. It can be so hard to know what to do when you don't understand what's happening with your child. Some of you may find yourself hooked into daily power struggles. I know this is a big one. And if you find yourself dealing with a daily power struggle, chat in the box what that power struggle is around. I'm sure one of them is going to be bedtime. Yep, that's to lead off. Bedtime, leaving the house, getting dressed, clothing. Yep, bedtime. Hairstyle, okay, getting ready, getting dressed, and potty. Yep, another one is often bedtime. There's meal times is one that can happen. Homework, depends on your age. Some of your kids are younger than homework. Sure, power struggle, not getting their own way. Yep. And I want you guys to listen to what I'm listen to what I'm saying other people are dealing with, because you're going to hear some things that you're going to be able to relate to today. So the other thing that can happen is you find yourself walking on eggshells. Be careful, don't want to start something, don't want to upset them. Anyone deal with the walking on eggshells? Just chat a yes. Yep. This is another really common one. Difficult too. Yep. So then you it's night and they're in bed and you steal a look at them asleep in their bed and they are perfect, the most perfect ever. And your heart fills with love and you vow to try harder the next day, just like you vowed to do yesterday. Because if trying harder were the solution, you wouldn't be here today, because I believe you could not be trying harder. I'm also guessing you're doing your best to follow the things that you've read in books and heard from other parents, and they're just maybe not working with your child. Maybe they're even making things worse. So I'm here to tell you 2 things right off the bat. Okay, are you listening? Number one, you're not alone. And number two, you get it right more often than you realize. I'm going to be throwing in some screen shares here. And there you go. If you take nothing else today, you're not alone. You get it right more often than you realize. But here's the thing. Many traditional child-centric approaches that rely on rewards and consequences to change behavior are missing a key piece of the parenting puzzle. This is a core understanding that behavior is communication. Let me give that a minute to sink in because it's quite radical. Behavior is communication. It's your child's first language. Without this understanding, it's like trying to navigate your parenting journey with road signs that are in a foreign language. You try to guess what they mean, you think they make sense, but they keep leading you down dead-end roads. Today, we're going to translate the road signs and talk about 5 key strategies to help you respond rather than react to your child. But first, let me share with you where I'm coming from. I have a special place in my heart for parents like you because I was that parent. My now almost 33-year-old child, birthday next week? No, this week, is doing great as a special educator at a high school for the deaf. We have an amazing relationship today, a relationship that absolutely would not have been possible without the 180-degree turnaround and critical relationship repair that began when they were 19. Let me back up a little bit. I struggled for years with my kiddos' oppositional behavior and defiance. I was caught in a negative feedback loop of daily power struggles. A lot of that was around homework, and it started in 3rd grade, but it just never ended. I felt more and more isolated as the voices around me told me to ramp up the consequences or to just try this or that worked for their kiddo. I blamed myself for not being consistent enough. And still we continued to struggle. Somewhere inside, I knew these approaches weren't right for my child, but I didn't know why. I felt like screaming, "You don't understand." But the problem was I didn't understand either. And I couldn't make sense of what was happening no matter how hard I tried. I was missing the same key piece, that behavior is communication, and I was going on the old paradigms. I finally connected to the right support to help us, but I thought at 19 it was too late. And then I learned a life-changing piece of brain science, and I'm quite a brain science geek. And it's a big part of my work. That executive function doesn't complete its development until about age 25, and I knew it was not too late to change things. So I dove into the process of repairing my broken relationship with my child. I learned to see them through different eyes, to see the stress, anxiety, and overwhelm that was driving the behavior, and I became their ally rather than their adversary. I got my child back. And that change in our lives inspired me to start my parent coaching business. And since then, our relationship has only gotten better. And I've gone on to work with hundreds of parents in both workshops and one-on-one in-depth coaching sessions, helping them make sense of their kids' behavior and restore peace at home. I take a parent-centric approach versus a child-centric approach. What that means is I believe the power lies in the hands of the parents to be the change agents. Imagine this. Your child is like a boat tossed about on the waves. It can be so tempting to jump in the boat, especially when a storm is raging. You want to help them, right? But rather than helping, you end up getting tossed about with your child, which are the things we talked about before. It looks like power struggles. It looks like walking on eggshells. It looks like worrying about what's down the road when they're teenagers. A parent-centric approach invites you to be the anchor, tethering your child and helping them feel safe. This allows you to be available for your child and able to be the source of regulation, which is what they need and what will help them to have what they need met. I have 7 guiding principles that inform my approach. They're on the wall behind me, but I'm going to put them on the screen. They're rooted in brain science, attachment theory, intergenerational family dynamics, and inner parenting wisdom. So if your family's like a tree, these principles are the roots nourishing what happens in your family. Before I go over the individual principles and we dive into the 5 strategies, if there are any questions so far, and I can probably address 1 or 2 questions, but if you chat them in, I'll see them later also. If you have any questions so far, chat them in, and I'll tell you something in the meantime. Keep track of your questions throughout this whole webinar, because I have office hours twice a week. They're free, twice a month. They're free, and it's on the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of the month at noon. So there's office hours next week, and I am going to invite you to that to bring your questions. All questions are welcome there. Last time we had like a few parents, and the biggest thing that came up for them about why they were there and what they wanted from being there was to be with other parents. A sense of community across the board. That's what they said they were there for. And then we also go on to discuss their questions and even brainstorm together some. So I'm going to be letting you know how to find out about office hours, because after this whole thing, I'm going to send you 1 follow-up email. I'll repeat this at the end. I'm not putting you on my mailing list, nothing automatically you're going to get without your permission, but you are going to get 1 follow-up email from your registration where I will invite you to my mailing list. There'll be an easy link that you can go to. Once you're on my mailing list, I send out things about twice a month or so. I will be sending out info about office hours and the Zoom links and how to attend that. So to go to office hours, you're going to get on the mailing list. I'm going to send you an email with an easy link for that. Okay, so I don't see any questions at the moment. No problem. Keep jotting them down as they come up. And I'm going to read my principles, and I'm going to put them right on the screen right now. They're actually there. Thank you for your patience with my screen sharing skills. So here's your tree. Here are the roots. The roots nourish. The strategies are based in these roots, and they allow the tree to thrive, your family to thrive. 7 principles of parent-centric parenting. And I'm going to send you a PDF of this in that follow-up email. Number 1, connection matters more than perfection. Number 2, behavior is an SOS, not an attack. Number 3, the better you do, the better your child does. Number 4, families are dynamic systems where all members affect each other. Number 5, your child wants to please you. Number 6, small changes lead to big results. And number 7, what you focus on increases. All right. So let me go on to the strategies now. These are 5 of my top strategies to help you tap into your parenting wisdom, and feel calmer and more confident about being the parent you want to be. That confidence comes from understanding what's happening with your child so that you can take actions aligned with the principles that can guide you. Within that, there's room for creativity. Each family is different, each child is different, but aligned with the principles, you can do different, like, specifics for your child or different things for different age child if they're guided by the principles, and they'll be aligned with this core um, belief, point of view, that behavior is communication. So number one, always remember that connection matters more than perfection. Now, at the end, I'm going to have all of these 5 things on a screenshot for you. But in the meantime, if you want to jot down notes, of course. So we baby humans, we're born hardwired for connection. It's actually a biological imperative for survival. Connection, we're hardwired for. The connection that we meet once we arrive in the world, that's our software. Whatever connection we meet is what determines how we feel safe in the world. So when your child is behaving in a challenging way or experiencing big emotions or isn't listening or fighting to get their way and you don't understand what's happening, picture an iceberg. So behavior, and here's more screen shares. Okay, let's get this first one up. Oh. Okay. Oh, behavior is the part you see. What's above the surface? It's what shows, right? So you've got the things we talked about, the bedtime struggle, the not listening, the opposition, tantrums, getting out the door, getting dressed. So this is what you see. However, under the surface, which is this one, yep. What's happening under the surface is what's driving the behavior. So that there's anxiety, possibly. There's some kind of stress in a bigger sense of what stress is. And there's overwhelm, perhaps. Now, it may be that they're doing something and you're like, I don't understand why they'd be stressed or overwhelmed right now. So I'll just give you one pretty big tip, is that transitions, and that can mean getting out of bed. That can mean walking downstairs for breakfast. It can mean going to brush your teeth. It can mean time to clean up. It can mean going to school. Transitions are the most stressful thing that we have. Some are bigger. We can move. That's a big one. Having a new baby in the house, a younger sibling, big transitions, right? But transitions are stressful. And so I want you to sort of tune in and notice, when are these power struggles occurring? And my prediction is that you're going to find that many of them are occurring during transitions, which may not be thought of as transitions because they happen every day, but then you're having a daily power struggle too. So notice that, just start noticing. So here's what we often do. We try to chip away at the behavior. We try to correct, we try to control. In the moment, it's happening often. Like, so we reason, we bribe, we threaten, we threaten a consequence or reward, do this and you'll get your iPad, whatever. We're chipping at the behavior up here. But the problem is that every time you chip a piece away, it doesn't last. This is what parents have told me over and over. What they're doing, it's not working because it keeps happening. It doesn't create a lasting change. So it keeps pushing up. So here's the last shot for this. What a parent-centric alternative invites you to do is go below the surface where you, excuse me, where your child is emotionally in that moment, and connect to your child where they are emotionally. When you bring your regulated, more regulated, it's not about perfection. We're just getting a little more regulated, because when you're looking and you're like, okay, that's on the surface, but below the surface, oh, how can I connect? When you bring that calmer, more regulated presence to connect rather than correct or control, you co-regulate. Your brains regulate together. And when they're, and they are no longer, they feel safer. Basically, they're like, oh, I'm having this huge emotion and I'm on my own with it. Scary, right? They're not thinking that rationally because they don't have that executive function, but that's what is happening in their survival brain, in their fight flight response. So when they're not alone with unmanageable feelings, they don't need to communicate with unmanageable behavior, and it diminishes. And then behavior needs to be addressed later. I'm not saying never correct your child. It's when you do it and how you do it. And so when everyone is calmed down, that's when you can address the behavior in a correction way. And when you use this approach consistently over time to address what your child needs as far as the connection, it builds a resilience and emotional regulation skills. And that's what they internally need to be able to self-regulate and regulate their behavior, to behave in the way socially and healthy emotionally. And it also is what builds their ability to use words instead of behavior to communicate. They have to build up to the words. They have to be heard first. So next time you're faced with a challenging behavior, I invite you to ask a different question. Instead of asking, how can I control my child's behavior right now? Ask yourself, how can I connect to my child right now? Asking a different question can help you be more able to tap into your parenting wisdom. So always remember that connection matters more than perfection. All right. Take a breath. Let's take a stretch. Some of you might have heard some of this before. Some of you might not have. It's a little different information than what you might typically hear. So just keep breathing, take in what you can. You're not going to take everything from this, and don't try, but if you can take one or two things other than those two important things at the beginning I talked about, that's great. That's great. And you guys get to watch it again, I hear. So, all right, number 2, second key strategy, respond to your child's behavior as an SOS, not an attack. So take a minute and imagine, I'm sure you won't have to imagine very long ago, a behavior that started to like push your buttons or get you frustrated or, agitated. Just close your eyes for a second and see your child with that behavior. And then imagine that it's actually an SOS, a cry for help, rather than an attack, rather than adversarial or deliberate attack, a cry for help. Because what if, okay, just wait a second, let me pause for a second, breathe that in. And if you would be so kind, if you noticed a difference in how you felt seeing your child behaving that way and having that different point of view, what did you notice? Did it change anything in your body, in your mind? If you'd be willing to share, just chat that in the box for me so I can see, and I'll notice them when they show up. And I'm going to go on to number 2. I'm going to continue. Oh, sad for my child. Yes, like your heart opens and you have emotion around that. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Yeah, please feel free to keep sharing. So, what if your child's difficult behavior or negative behavior is their best attempt to tell you what they need in the only language they have available? You could call it behavior talk. It's their first language. Children communicate. I'm just going to throw this in. Behavior is the most, words are the most executive function required. Words are the goal, you know. Teach them to use words for their emotions over time, build skills. The second one is attitude. When your kid is like, showing you a face or stomping their feet, they just have an attitude. Attitude is a step below words. They don't quite have access to words, but they're still communicating, and it is a step above behavior. Attitude's not, it's not exactly behavior. They're not like throwing something or hitting or ignoring, like being aggressive. So there's those 3 levels, but anyways, so if that's true, that they're trying to tell you what they need in the best way they can, it's not personal. I know it feels really personal, but it's not. And they can turn into a scary dinosaur. This was really helpful for one of my parents I worked with. When she understood this about the scary dinosaur, when her son would get out of control and start really acting out, misbehaving, she was able to see the dinosaur. And what she understood from that is you can't reason with the dinosaur. It's got to like play out a bit. And that was super helpful for her. They can also turn into what I call an alien, which is a little less the aggressive side and more the like ignoring, walking away, just kind of more of a internally kind of being silly is also a dysregulation sometimes, especially when they're overtired. So dinosaur or alien, can't reason with that one. So seeing the SOS can shift how you feel inside you, how much you are getting dysregulated. And if you are calmer, if you feel like what someone chatted in, if you feel sad, that is a more calmer state, and then you go back to the like, well, how do I connect to my child? Which I'm going to also go in the next step. I'm going to talk about a big way to connect to your child, a big strategy for that. And then when you shift your stance toward your child and you start to shift internally, your heart stops racing as much. You stop kicking your toolbox and you start to be able to maybe open it and pick out one of your tools that you know what to do. You shift from adversary to ally, and you can be in a better place to give them what they need. So respond to your child's behavior as an SOS, not an attack. And here's a story from one of my clients. Her son, who was about 3 to 4, the age of a lot of your kids, he tended to have a hard time at social events, and he would often have a meltdown at a birthday party. And it was hard on the parents because they would try to encourage him to go play or do stuff. And often, like I said, there was a meltdown. So after this couple began to understand some of these principles and about what the behavior was telling them, and they started to be able to see his particular clues that he was starting to dysregulate, and in other words, getting more overwhelmed. Social demands, social interactions for some kids that are stress sensitive, even introverts, can be very demanding and overwhelming. So they noticed that he was starting to get those expressions and be a little resistant and, don't you want to go ride on the ride? And he was like, no. In the past, they would have tried to encourage him more and it would have not gone well, would have had a meltdown. This time they were like, they made a decision to leave the party, which was hard because there's social stuff among the parents too. And like, you don't want to be the parent whose kid has to leave, but better to leave without a tantrum, or not even a tantrum, a meltdown. So they recognized what was happening and they made a choice to be their kid's ally. And they took him away from the party, said their goodbyes, went to the car. They put him in his car seat. And she said he immediately fell sound asleep. And she could not stop saying how good she felt. She's like, I felt like I did a really good thing for him. I gave him what he needed. Like, and immediate feedback was it was exactly what he needed. He went right to sleep. He was quite overcome. And the next step would have been the meltdown. So she felt amazing about that. And I love that story. And so respond to your child's negative behavior as an SOS, not an attack. All right, now we're going to go on to number 3. Number 3 is notice emotional age. Now, what does that mean? Because your child has more than one age, actually can have more than one age at the same time. They have their chronological or developmental age. So let's say your child's 3. They have their intellectual age. Let's say children vary there's a whole range of how children are. And, but let's say, for example, your child is very articulate for a 3-year-old in this case. And the reason I'm saying this is because it brings in a confusion. So your child's very articulate. That can be really confusing and it can make you think that your child is also able to tell you what they're feeling and to explain what's happening. And it's in conflict with their developmental age and possibly their emotional age. So let's say they're 3, but they're stressed out. It's time for bed, and now they're starting to melt down, and now they're starting to act like they're having like a tantrum, like they're 2, not even like they're 3 or 3.5. So their emotional age in the face of that stress of the transition is regressing. They're acting younger. And yet, they could explain things. They have the ability to tell you things. But in that moment, you try to get them to tell you what they need, but they can't, or they get more power into the power struggle. That's because these ages are not the same at the same time. And so when they don't line up, it's confusing. And so here's the thing. Here's actually the magic. The magic lies in the emotional age, because that is actually the only point of connection for you when they're in a state, when they're acting out. You might notice your 5-year-old is acting like a 2-year-old. Well, they're emotionally 2 in that moment. And when they're dysregulated, they act younger, but it's not an act. That's the secret or the magic. They literally, their brain is in a state where the emotional age is the one you can actually connect to and need to connect to help bring them back to regulation, co-regulate. If you start trying to reason with them, it's literally like reasoning with a 2-year-old, even though you could reason with them when they're calm. So they've regressed, their rational brains offline. And so the magic to getting through is to look for their emotional age, and it gives you the point of connection. When you meet them where they are emotionally, it can seem really counterintuitive. And I'm going to tell you about one of my parents I'm working with right now. But what it allows is you to make the connection. The brains can regulate together. Your child can calm down. then they can be reasoned with once they're calmer. So my client right now, Joanne, has a 5-year-old, and she also has a 2.5-year-old. So that means when the 5-year-old was only 2.5 is when the baby brother was born. And at age 2.5, the brain isn't even quite on par with self-regulation. It's like around 3 developmentally is when you get to self-regulation, functioning pretty well. So having a new sibling is a big deal for a kid. So now it's 2.5 years later, and mom and dad have been noticing that when it's time to put the younger one to bed, the older one is crawling on the floor like a baby. She's talking baby talk. And this can be annoying, certainly. It can also be confusing. And it can also sort of make us nervous, because our goal is that our child be independent, that they know how to use words and ask for what they need. And when they're acting like a baby, when they're older, it can, like I said, it can be nervous making. And what's counterintuitive, and this is exactly what they found out, they were like, it felt like, I don't think they said counterintuitive exactly, but they said it didn't feel right. It felt like I want them to be independent. I need to make them be less baby and more, act their age. But the child's emotional need at that moment was that need of a 2-year-old. And so they started relating differently. They started, I think the incident they told me about was like, it was nighttime, which was hard for her anyways. She wanted to be carried to the potty. And so she did it. She carried her to the potty. And she said she could not believe the giant smile on her child's face when she did that, because the child felt safer. The child felt met in a way. And now it's only a few weeks later since they really started, like, if she's acting like a baby, ask her if she wants to sit on your lap. Just sort of relating like you would or you did when they were younger at that moment. You'll see it. If you look for it, you're going to see it now, because it's pretty obvious, but you haven't been used to looking for it. I'll put it that way. And now she's starting to like be better about doing things on her own. Like, she's through whatever stress she was going through. And I think some of those needs got addressed that might not have been addressed at the time when she had the new brother. And that's such a time consuming thing for mom and dad. So, so noticing emotional age. I even had another mom a few years ago, very similar age difference. And when she started tuning into that, she had the 5-year-old come up on her lap, and the 5-year-old looked up at her mom and said, "Am I still your baby?" That's extremely articulate about what she needed emotionally, even though she was in a babyish state emotionally also. So I love that story. I've never forgotten that. All right, we're up to number 4. Strategy 4, take sips of self-care throughout the day. So if you don't put your oxygen mask on first, you can't help your child. It is that simple. No child wants a parent running on empty. Just like a car can't run on empty, you can't be the parent you want to be if you're not filling up with what you require for your well-being. And it's very hard because we're not conditioned for this. We're conditioned to be like, after everyone's asleep, I'll grab a moment, but that moment never happens because you are exhausted by then. And we're neurologically tied to each other. Our child, I keep talking about co-regulate. I keep talking about your brains. You calm down, you can influence them to calm down. And 80% of communication is nonverbal. So it's all being communicated in very subtle ways that are tied to the survival brain being able to pick up all those cues. So it is important to take care of yourself, but it can feel overwhelming and impossible when you think of adding one more thing to your day. It's overflowing already, right? So what I recommend, instead of like a giant big gulp like they have in the movie theater, and you're like, all right, I'm going to drink water today, and you try to drink down that whole 64 ounces in the morning, and then you don't think about it again. That isn't going to hydrate you. I recommend sips of self-care, sips of water. Like, so you have water, make sure you have it there, and you just keep reminding yourself to take sips throughout the day. And over the day, you're going to be more hydrated. That's going to help you be more regulated, help you be calmer or access that calming down easier. So sips of self-care. Maybe you just go and you step outside for like 2 minutes and look up at the sky and take a breath of fresh air. Depends on how old your kids are, obviously. Maybe you go and, again, depends how old your kids are. You take a bathroom break and you stay an extra minute or two in there and you just like chill a sec, or you check your email, or you do something that's just you time, but tiny sips. They add up. You listen to some music in the background. Anyways, one of the things I do with parents is brainstorm this, like, how can I possibly take care of myself better? And yet it's so crucial to take care of yourself better because your child feels untethered. It's part of the anchoring. If you aren't doing well, your child feels that can be very untethering and stressful for them. And number 5, so we're doing pretty good. It's 6:15. We're up to number 5. This is an hour. Number 5, this strategy is be curious. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, and I'm working on this in my own life with my partner, actually, being curious can help override the reactionariness that we have when we get triggered or when we hear something that pushes our buttons. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, the part of your brain that can tap into your imagination, think of a creative thing about what to do with your child in this moment or about this particular thing that's going on, that part of your brain shuts down when you're overwhelmed. You can't be imaginative. You can't be creative. So your first reactions to challenging behavior, like not listening, defiance, are of the knee-jerk variety. These reactions tend to put you at odds. They can start or exacerbate the power struggle and leave you feeling with those feelings of frustration and wishing you had done something different. So next time you feel yourself, you get that, what I call it, the here we go again feeling. Who knows that here we go again feeling? You could tap yes into the chat if you know what I mean by here we go again. Yeah. Hit the pause button. What does that mean? You feel that here we go again. The hardest thing is hitting that pause button where you don't talk immediately or try to, stop it or do all the things that involve talking. You pause. And the most important thing you can do is try to take a breath or two. But it's hitting the pause that gives you the space to be curious and wonder, what's going on with my kid right now? I wonder what they're feeling. Like, they just said this thing to me and I'm like, no, you have to do this now. Or, well, I'm talking for how I did it. Or sometimes it's like that, right? Like, maybe not quite like that, but it's like we're trying to convince them that it's time for cleaning up. It's time for bed. It's time for, time to get out the door. And we get into this we start pushing. And when you hit the pause button, it just makes you stop a second. I had a dad that used this strategy. He's the one who used those words that I picked up from him. I have a strategy I call stop, drop, and breathe. But he just would say, I just hit the pause button. And that gives you child to calm down a little, and also gives your child a little space to calm down and gives you room to get curious. Getting curious could bring up like remembering something that worked last week and then you try it again. Or it could bring up like a playfulness. It could bring up a recognition. Oh, this is that transition Kathy mentioned. Oh, all right, let me just step back a second and breathe a sec and think about like, what would assist my child in this transition instead of, that pressure and stress to keep going. So being curious can really shift the dynamic between you and your child and between people, you and your partner. And then your imagination can come back in. And then you can be creative and connect more easily to the parenting wisdom that is inside you. I see this happen over and over where I share a principle and a parent's like working on the thing. Like this was my recent client too. She's like, and they come up with an idea like, how about we try this? And I'm like, that's brilliant. They got creative. Once they got less nervous about what was happening, they understood their child was either regressed or emotionally stressed, or maybe it was whatever they understood about it based on the principles and the parent-centered approach. Now their imagination comes in and they're thinking of these really interesting solutions and fun things that I try to collect so I can share them with other parents. So I'm gonna put one thing on the screen again. The 10 seconds you take to pause and breathe will never make things worse. I don't believe it will. If it does, you should email me and tell me how it did. But unless someone's getting hurt, of course, that's a caveat. Of course, if someone's getting hurt, you have to jump in, whether you're calm, whether you breathe, whether you paused. But like many things are not at that level yet. When you get the here we go again feeling, that's when you pause. Push the pause when you get the here we go again. The pause is going to help you not to fuel that fire of escalating the power struggle. All right, so let's see. Okay, so I just want to reiterate, let you know if you've gathered questions, invite you to office hours. It's one of the services I have. I had it was once a month, and the parents requested that could we have it more often. So I'm like, yeah, great, I'll try that. It's a great opportunity. The other thing I want to let you know about, and after I let you know about this, I'm going to review all 5 strategies, put that on the screen. And it looks like we might just have time for a couple questions at the end. So the most important thing I want to invite you to do is get on my mailing list. And I'll be sending that email. It will have the invitation right through my website. It's just click a link, join my mailing list. You put your name and email. And like I said, I send out like a blog post twice a month, usually helpful stuff aligned with what I'm talking about tonight, and also announcements of the office hours or maybe another webinar or something like that. So get on my mailing list. And then one of the things I offer as a service is called a child behavior consultation. And this is a chance for you to delve a little more deeply if you're having specific things you want to work on in your family and with your child or yourself, all of that all tied together. And it allows you to, it gives you the opportunity to share your challenges, share what you're going through, be heard, receive some empathy and understanding, and also get some relief and some direction about what would help. And it gives us a chance. It's a standalone session. It's not connected to anything else, but it does give us a chance to see if we would be a good fit if you wanted to work further in coaching with me. And so that is available right through my website, which I will put in the chat. parentingbeyondwords.com. And it's a tab at the top that says child behavior consultation. And the mailing list is a tab at the top that says free support. And then on that page is where you can join the mailing list. Also, I'll send you the link. So that's what I have available for you if you want to dive a little deeper. Office hours child behavior consultation, and then the possibility of more in-depth coaching if that feels right for you. So let's review the 5 strategies. Let me find that screen share sheet. Where is that? It is with this. No, it's not that. With this, that's iceberg. Rainbow tree. Where is it? Right there. There we go. All right, let's review all 5. Always remember that connection matters more than perfection. That's one of the 7 principles too. Actually, the 7 principles are imbued in this, some of them more directly. Respond to your child's negative behavior as an SOS, not an attack. That's one of the principles. Notice emotional age. That's one of your biggest key strategies toward figuring out how to get through to your child. Some of you said they won't listen. This is one clue for you. If their emotional age is younger in a moment, or even overall, sometimes for some kids, but like whatever their emotional age is, that's where you're going to get through. And so see what happens with that. Let me know. I'll put my email in the box too, in the chat too, and you are welcome to email me. Sips of self-care throughout the day. That principle is the better you do, the better your child does. And be curious. Be curious. Hit the pause button and be curious. So those are the 5 strategies. So let me stop this share. And I would love to hear if anyone would like to chat in the box, or even unmute if you feel like speaking into the group. You can raise your hand by clicking on reactions and then raise hands. And Mark will call on you if he sees you raising your hand. And my question is, of course, you can't do that yet because you don't even know what I'm asking. I'm curious, what's the most valuable thing you're taking with you today that will help you with your family? I'd really be curious to hear what you found value. And you can chat it in the box or raise your hand. I'm opening it up for a minute. Yeah, and oh, great. See, thank you. Emotional age has been, over the past 10 years I've been in business, over and over, it's emotional age that parents are very like a light bulb with. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Maybe I'll do a whole webinar on emotional age. Fantastic. That's great. That's really helpful feedback too, because I know how to help you better if I know what is helpful. Also, there's a room if you have a question. It's a little tight at the end here, but if you do, and chat one in the box, I'll see what I do with it, but I'll also have it. Great. Noticing transitions. Oh my God, you guys are amazing. You guys rock. You're taking like some of the most effective things that can change. Noticing transitions, even when we don't think it's a transition. That's right. That's right. Some kids, they're so stress sensitive. Just getting out of bed, dressed, and down to breakfast is like 5 transitions for them. So great, great, great. All right, and you're welcome. Like I said, let me put my email in the box. I'll have this in the follow-up email too. Okay, that's my email. And like I said at the beginning, I'm going to say it again. If you only take away 2 things today, and already you're saying you're taking more, and I'm thrilled to hear that. Let it be that you're not alone. Look around. There's like a ton of people on this call. You're in good company, wonderful company. And the second thing is this. You get it right more often than you realize. So yeah, that's it. I thank you so much for this hour of your time. Everyone be well tonight.